Before we get rolling with this week's episode, just want to take a moment to thank you guys for all the awesome support with all the contributions. It really means a lot to me because it allows me to do what I love here. And as I start gearing up for the fall trip, I'm really excited to take you guys along for the ride on the fall trip to hopefully up my game a little bit as far as production value and storytelling and all that. And so it means so much when I see the contributions coming in. If you guys do want to help support this ad-free content, there's a link down below. You'll see it'll take you right to my website where you can see how to do the PayPal subscriptions and all that. But so I thank you guys so much. You guys are awesome. I appreciate it. This week's video is about rediscovering old photos that I thought were trash, but turns out they're pretty good. So hope you guys enjoy. What is going on, everyone? So in this week's video, I want to get back to talking about photography and showing some pictures because honestly, I think I've been sitting here in this studio for far too long, just talking about technical things and talking about photo things and not showing enough photos because honestly, I would rather be out on a shooting trip right now, exposing film, telling the story behind the photos. But my next trip is going to be in late October, and so it'll still be a little while longer until I'm able to get back out there and find some new subjects. So I am looking forward to that. But in the meantime, let's talk about some pictures. In this case, these are some photos that I have sort of pulled from. I say pulled from the trash can is probably not the right way of saying it, but I really don't throw away any sheets of film that I ever expose, even like the really horribly bad ones. I keep them for some reason. But a little while back, someone had ordered a print from a photo I'd taken a couple years or so ago. So I was digging through some boxes of film to try to find that original negative because I needed to have it sent off to be drum scanned. In the process of doing that, since I am not very well organized with my film, I just kind of throw them in boxes. I found some sheets of film from, I think they're from 2011 and possibly 2012. Some photos that were taken in Zion and in Death Valley. I know, big surprise. And these are photos that I had, for whatever reason, rejected initially. But now that it has been many, many years since then, and I pulled the film out and threw it on the light table, I realized, there's a lot of potential in these photos, and what I initially thought was a failure for one reason or another turns out to be that, I ended up capturing the photo that I had envisioned all along. And in some ways, I almost kind of even forget as to why it was that I rejected the pictures to begin with. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you these photos, I'm gonna talk about them, and talk about sort of how my perception has changed with time. So the first photo is one that I'm pretty sure I shot in 2011. This is in Death Valley, and it was a year that the salt flats had flooded out. And actually could have been 2010 too. It's kind of hard to keep track. But I did the thing that I always do, which is where I leave the camera overnight. And that particular year I had captured a pretty cool photo I liked of the flooded salt flats of Death Valley. It was kind of an evening photo. And at some point I decided to leave the camera overnight for a morning photo. This is a photo where my camera is facing towards the north versus the evening photos I was kind of facing towards the south. So I'm looking up or down the valley. It's a little bit of a softer light if you're looking towards the north. You're not looking right at the sun. But I used a wide angle lens and I set up my camera, and for whatever reason, facing the north, I didn't have as dominant of patterns within the salt itself like I did facing towards the south, something about the angle of the light. But I noticed that, the mountains up to the north, they got some really nice warm light on them at sunrise. So I figured I'm gonna leave my camera there, hope for some clouds, hope for some good light. And that's exactly what I got. I had some nice, sort of calm looking clouds in the sky. There was a break where the sun kind of peeked under those clouds and illuminated the mountains. It was nice and warm. And though I didn't have as interesting of a foreground as I did in some of the other photos from that year, which might be one of the reasons why I had rejected this photo, there's still some kind of interesting little crack formations and stuff. And my camera was set up in probably, 3 inches of water or so. So it was one of the things where I had to be really calm so I'm not moving my legs around and creating like little ripples in the water that would kind of soften everything underneath. And it's kind of hard for me to do because typically I just pace around as I'm waiting for good light. But I made an exposure, I used Velvia 50, and I'm pretty sure I used a 2-stop filter, a grad filter, in order to help control the sky and balance it out a little bit. And I kind of like how this photo turned out. It's different than any of the other flooded salt flats photos that I've taken in the past. It has all the elements. It's got the warm golden light. It's got the clouds. And I think the only real reason I think of that maybe I had rejected to begin with is I just didn't like the feel of the image at the time, or maybe it didn't capture the feeling that I had as I stood there. But now it's been many years since then, and I've forgotten all that anyways. I almost even kind of forgot this photo existed. So I'm not really comparing that photo to what it actually was at that moment. And I kind of like the photo now. I'm pretty happy with it. I spent some time scanning it in. I did add a little bit of a vignette to it to put a little more emphasis towards the middle of the photo. And the lens I used, 150 millimeter wide angle lens. That lens has a little bit of a vignette to it anyways. And I have a feeling that for the original photo, I tried to get rid of the natural vignette that was there. And I think that just didn't put as much emphasis towards the middle of the photo. So when I rescanned it in, kind of reworked with the file, what it is, I took the saturation down below what the actual film was, because it started feeling a little cartoony and not realistic. So I toned down the saturation, I added a little bit of a vignette, and now I have a photo I think has that really sort of calm feeling of standing on the salt flats, watching a sunrise. So I kind of like how that one turned out. The second photo. So the second photo is one that was taken in Zion National Park. And one of the things I absolutely love photographing in Zion are the maples during the fall, because they have so much character, they have so much color. The trunks look really nice, the leaves look really nice, the way they're just kind of delicately hold those leaves out. And especially when you combine the maples with reflected light, it's really magical. And the maples like to grow on steep slopes right at the base of cliffs. And so you'll see these really beautiful lush green trees over there. And during the fall, they get this really nice color. Some of them go yellow, some of them go red. But it varies a lot from year to year. And so there's this one really nice grove of trees that I have visited every single year since I started going there in the fall, which was in 2009. And right at the base of a cliff, and this cluster of trees right in the middle, there aren't any trees there. You can see sort of pulverized bits of wood. And my best guess as to what happened is that a very large rock fell from up on top of the cliff and just smashed that tree right in the middle of this grove. So now you have this sort of donut of trees where you can kind of stand in the middle of it, right where the rock fell, which may not be the smartest of moves, but you can stand right in the middle of it and you have this wall of trees all around you. And since you're up on a slope, since you're kind of elevated, and since you're up on one kind of edge of this canyon wall, you look out over to the other side of the canyon. And in the morning time, sun would hit the far canyon wall, and you have this nice, soft, warm, reflected light to sort of backlight those beautiful maples. Now that particular year, there was a really nice showing of fall color, and absolutely beautiful. It was like walking through some sort of like wonderland. It was just pure magic, really. And so I used my 450 millimeter lens, which was my longest lens at the time, and I shot a photo just kind of framing the chaos of those trees. And now that I think about it, what I had in mind when I was setting up this composition is I was going to crop just the middle of it and make it into a panoramic image, because I had taken a photo maybe a year or two earlier. And it was a photo taken with my, I've since sold it, but I had a Fuji panoramic 6x17 camera. Really fun camera, I just didn't use it enough to justify keeping it. But I really like shooting the chaos of those maples on 6x17 film. So I just kind of framed the shot in a way that I figured I'd use just the middle of it. And what's interesting is that there's this branch kind of up in the upper left corner that's kind of slightly diagonal, kind of moving in a different direction than all the other branches. And when I was setting up the composition, I saw that as a distraction. I figured I'm just going to use the area below it. But now that I've revisited this photo, now that I look at it, I kind of like the fact that that breaks up the fact that all the other branches are just straight up and straight down. So even though I didn't frame it with using the original aspect ratio, I've kind of come full circle. I kind of appreciate the fact that it is a decently composed photo of chaos, which is sometimes something that's kind of hard to do. And one of the reasons I had rejected this photo to begin with was that there is a bright spot kind of middle in the background. So now I've showed you kind of what the photo looked like after I worked on it a little bit. I'll show you what it looked like before that. You'll see that way off in the background, kind of in the middle of the photo, there's this bright spot. And it is pushing the limits as far as what the slide film can do. And when I had scanned it, I didn't really have a good ability to darken that area because I felt like I didn't have enough information to work with. So I tried to kind of clone over that area with some other stuff, but there's so much randomness, there's so much shallow depth of field in some areas that are in focus, some areas that aren't, that I just wasn't really successful doing that. But I took a risk, and since I was sending some sheets of film to get scanned for the print that had been ordered by a person, I decided to send off this sheet of film and have it scanned as well. And the drum scanner was able to pull some really good detail from that bright area. So I was able just to darken down that area and kind of feather it a little bit. And I was able to have all the information I needed there. So that's how I dealt with the really bright area. And then there was this dark oak leaf up in the kind of upper right edge of the photo. And I was able to kind of carefully clone that as well, because that just looked like a distraction. So I went from a scene that was absolutely beautiful, that I had different intentions, thinking I was going to do a panorama, to kind of changing my thoughts on it and then going towards just a as it was shot composition. And this is a photo I really like now. It's actually one that is on my main page of my website. There's different categories, and this is now the lead photo for the with trees section. And what's interesting is that I've revisited the same scene every single year since I started going to Zion. And especially since I exposed this photo, because I thought it was a failure at that point in time. And even this past fall when I went to Zion, I hiked to that same area. Those trees were all super green. I told myself, you know, near the end of this trip, those trees are going to be looking good. I'm going to recreate that photo. And one of the things I've learned is that that never happens. Even, I mean, if you take a photo, if it turns out okay, but there's something you don't like about it, and you think to yourself, I'm going to revisit that location, I am going to reshoot that photo. First of all, it's not going to really work, just because the conditions are never going to be quite the same again. Things will be different, and what you envisioned, you think you could do, you're not going to be able to do. But also, at least for me, if I'm trying to recreate some photo I've already taken, I get bored with doing that. I don't really want to stand there and go through all that effort just to do something I've already done. So that is why it felt really good to revisit that sheet of film and realize that I had captured exactly what I had set out to capture to begin with, and I actually have a photo that turned out really nice. And I think it will look absolutely beautiful if I ever print this image, which I know I will at some point. But I want to thank everyone for watching, and I will see you next week.